me? Can you hear me okay? Hi. So our first question for you, Mary, what's your inspiration for the spaces that you create? Are they real interiors or do you imagine them? I draw most of my inspiration from things in my home, and I kind of think of them as being kind of like self-portraits in a way. I used to paint these like I used to have a really, really different style of painting where my paintings were like very, very painterly and very emotive and like very self-referential. And every time I had a show, I felt like totally naked and really uncomfortable. Like there was this big divide between I don't know, like what I was producing in my studio and my ability to show it. And I kind of took a step back from painting for a while because I don't know, I wasn't really comfortable with the work I was doing, even though I liked it personally. I didn't really love showing it. So for about a year, I had like this whole creative block where I didn't really do much painting at all. And then I had a friend come over who didn't know how to paint at all and wanted to paint. And so I was like, oh, I'll just set up a still life or something and we can start from there. I'll teach her how to paint through a still life. And then she went home and I just kept painting and painting and painting. And then I kept looking at my house and like, oh, I can paint that, I can paint that, can paint that. And it just started me working again. And the things I was most interested in were like objects I'd carried near and dear to me for many, many years and taken from like apartment to apartment and house to house, and started realizing that I could use the like artifacts and objects in my house to kind of show the same things, but have a level where I wasn't revealing so much of myself, and that they were more relatable to like a broader audience as well, beyond just like my own self. The other piece of it is that I had moved from Vancouver to California, and just like moving to California, I moved in 2012. It just like opened my eyes to this totally different palette of color. So still lives and interiors allowed me to like explore the warmth of these colors, and the painting sort of became more of like a color study almost. And I started like flattening space and playing with space in a different way. So most of my inspiration comes, I'd say, from California and also interiors, and I am just interested in like objects and the narratives that they hold, and opening that up to like how other people can perceive those as well. One thing I noticed in like my years as an artist or an art educator was that a lot of people that you speak with about art feel very threatened about talking about art. Like they're not, there's such this idea of like that you have to be the expert in the art world. And so a lot of the general public is like afraid to interact with art or talk about it. And I really want to get away from that in my own work. I want my work to be very accessible to anybody, and for people to just know intrinsically if they like it or don't like it. And they don't need to have a master's degree or PhD to understand or think about it on like a critical level. I just want people to have something that resonates with them and that they can relate to in their own lives. So that is kind of why I want to remove myself from it a little and have it like, I like that my identity is still in there, but in a way that's more concealed so that it can be more accessible to a broader audience.
So much joy in your work, I feel.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that was a big shift too. I also, I think I spent so long thinking like, what is my art about? And what is my art about? And I was reading all these different books of different artists. And I read this quote from Matisse that was like, they're just about joy. And that can be enough. Not to say that's all that there is, but I think there is a space for art and a need in people's lives for that. So I do like focusing on like the brighter side of things in my work, and predominantly through color.
And so we were wondering, because I know that like in the back in the hand piece, you have de Kooning, and then a lot of your interiors have art books. So there's different references with Matisse, de Kooning.
Yeah.
And so are there specific artists that influence you, or how do you choose which books and artifacts you incorporate in your pieces?
My husband's a designer, and I mean, I have a background in art history, and there's just so much art and design in our lives and in our home. And he's got a design studio up the road, and our whole lives are just like, there's so many books everywhere. So it is like one part that it is just because that is what is around us. But on the other side, I also like kind of being tongue in cheek and just showing what my references are. Like one artist that is kind of always sneaking up in my paintings is Hockney. I love David Hockney so much. And I think there was a show here, I think it was 2014, maybe it was 2013, the Larger Than Life Hockney show at the De Young. And it was just like these incredible paintings. And I was at the time was doing an internship there in the art education program. And so every day I got to go and like look at these paintings over and over and over and like look at his mark making, and just was so inspired by them. So I like to just like play homage to the artists that I am inspired by. So I do like to sneak their names in. So yeah, I'd say that's why. And how they get selected.
In addition to your interiors, we've also had a couple works at the gallery that are figurative works. How does your process differ between the two, between a space and then the space that a figure is residing in, if there's a difference?
I don't think there's a huge difference, like the way that I paint a figure versus an interior or a still life. I kind of approach all the subject matter in the same way. Maybe what I'm thinking about is different, but like the handling of the material, I consider it all the same. Like basically, by the time I've thought of a composition, I'm really just thinking about like contrast and color and shape when I'm painting, and where things lie. So I will be thinking of a body as a shape, not really necessarily much different than like a vase or a book. But I do actually like painting figures, though, is more natural to me because that's kind of what my body of work used to be, was a lot more figures. So I love doing both, but I do think of all the subjects as like very similar.
Yeah, and I know that you have a graduate degree in art therapy. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
And so, how do you think that influences your work, or do you think it does, or?
I think it does a lot because actually I was working, I mean, I love doing art therapy, and I think that kind of is evident in my path of like how my work evolved, was because like as an adolescent and as a teenager, I always was using art I was super shy and like a very quiet, like very reserved young woman. And I always used art as my voice. And that's kind of how my paintings were so expressive, was I was always showing everything I was feeling through my paintings. And like I understood the value of that at a very young age. So I always knew I wanted to be an artist. But I didn't really know like how viable that was as a career. So the next most intuitive thing for me to do was to like help people in a similar position as me to find art as a tool to give them a voice as well. So hence going on to graduate school for art therapy. So I loved that. I worked with children for a long time and just like helped show them the tools of using art as expression and that sort of thing. And I did that every day. I had my own studio where had kids coming in all day long, and it was fabulous. But after quite a while of doing that, I started feeling like jealous of the kids. Because I really wanted to be an artist. That's all I wanted to do. And like, I loved the work I was doing, and it was very meaningful, but I was showing them how to do what I really wanted to do. And so at some point I needed to like sit with that and say like, okay. The other part of it too is that when I was working with kids, I actually was learning so much from how they were working. And that so much of their emphasis of what they were doing was about joy and color and just exploring the material. So I had a lot of time to like step back and like think about that, I guess. So in 2017, that's when I stopped doing art therapy, and I just went full stop and did a month-long residency and was like, I'm going to be an artist, and just focused on that. And my husband's always very confused by this, because when I did that residency, it was 1 month long and I did 10 pieces of work, and it was like a full body of work that was just like boom, 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 boom. And it's just, I had so much time to think about what I wanted to do. And I don't know. Anyway, since then things have just come pouring out and it's been great. But so I do think art therapy has informed the way I work. And I do credit kids a lot for my style in a way.
I mean, it shows in your work, because that's exactly the perspective I see in your work, is that joy and that, like you say, just almost getting down to like the basics, where it's like the color, you really focus on the material, and that's what I see come through in your work. So that's a really neat
progression.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it is very intentional. So I just try to be like very clear about valuing the space for that.
We love it. We love and we love the new work that you're doing with the hands and the texture. I'm excited to share that in New York.
I want to know about the hands. How did that happen? Yeah. They're so cool.
Thank you. I know that's a kind of a big pivot. There's some right there. So fun. I'm really excited about them. So if you look, like, as I was saying with the objects being a lot of things that are in my own home, some of the objects will repeat in many of my pieces. And one symbol or thing, object you'll find in many of my works, like going back, I don't know, the last 5 years, is there's often, or maybe almost in every painting, there's a hand. And I don't think maybe anyone would notice that unless they're very familiar with my work, but there's often a hand. And I think the hand is, it is referencing an actual object in my home. And it's this wood hand that I found in Mexico a long time ago. And I mean, it's just one of those things that I was drawn to in a market and brought home. But the hand took on this whole other significance in my life, because when I moved from Vancouver, I moved to New York with like just a small suitcase and had nothing but my clothes, and had, you know, very little room to bring extra stuff that reminded me of home. And the one thing I brought was that hand. And so that hand became like this signifier of like all these different moments of time in my life and transition. And it's kind of, I don't know, I think I've lived in like 12 different places since that time. We've moved a lot. But the hand has been this like one constant. And anyway, so I guess in this past show that I had, I was creating work and thinking a lot about that and its significance. And I just thought, like, I just really want to like show the importance of that object. So I want to change the frame of it being embedded in the piece to making it the piece itself. And then also just during COVID and it's been such a crazy year, obviously for everyone, but just thinking of like connection and like the hand as a symbol of like welcoming and protection and just all those things that are just, and community and touch and connection, like all these things that we've just lacked so much of this past year. So it just took on this other relevancy. So that's why there's so many hands. I'm excited to see what people think of them.
Yeah, well, we like them.
Thank you. You never know when you're doing something different, but it is just artistically, it's nice to do something different as well and just like branch out a little bit.
Make some changes, but still you can see it's your work.
Yeah, exactly.
It's identifiable, but it'll be something a little bit different.
Yeah.
But Mary, we so appreciate you. And
thank you so much.
Work and your time and your energy, and yes, it's like zoom out.
Awesome. Thank you so much.